Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's Thursday with AARP Wisconsin show. I am Amber Miller, your hostess. And please note that this show is pre-recorded, but please still feel free to post any questions or comments below, and we will make sure to get to them. So before we get to our show today, just a couple announcements. Of course, please visit the AARP Wisconsin website should you want information on upcoming events or initiatives that we're working on. You can find everything at aarp.org/WI. Please also remember the Community Connections initiative that started right in the beginning of COVID. If you go to the website below, which is aarpcommunityconnections.org, you'll find a couple things there. One is volunteer opportunities within your neighborhood that you can either join or actually start yourself. And then there's also information about AARP's Friendly Voice. There is no cost. You do not need to be a member, and it is open to all ages, but you could put a request in for yourself or for your loved one to receive a phone call from one of our AARP trained volunteers, because as we know, it's really nice to hear a friendly voice on the other end. So just as a friendly reminder, no fee, open to all, and you do not need to be an AARP member. April, of course, is volunteer month. So, of course, here at AARP, we would love to say a huge thank you to all of our really great volunteers that help us make impact in your community every day. So if you're interested in joining the AARP Wisconsin volunteer family, you could do that by visiting the website below, which is aarp.org/I-want, the number 2. So I want to volunteer. And when you get to that link, you'll find information about the opportunities available, and you'll be able to fill out an online application. And one of the AARP Wisconsin staff members will get back to you. There are opportunities, possibly in person and also virtually. So if you're throughout the whole state of Wisconsin, there probably is an opportunity for you, but we'd love for you to join our family. Once again, you can go to aarp.org/I-want to volunteer. Otherwise, there is volunteer information at the AARP Wisconsin website. So April, besides being volunteer month, is also financial literacy month. So there's a couple different things, of course, when you think of financial literacy, you think of money management or retiring or budgeting. But today we're joined by Courtney Anclam with AARP Wisconsin, who leads the efforts with our Fraud Watch work. And she's going to be talking about scams, but kind of in a different way, which I'm really excited about. So I'd love to introduce Miss Courtney Anclam. Hello, Courtney.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. You know me not only as the hostess, of course, but as a coworker. And when you were going to be on the show, when you were talking about this really kind of creative idea to talk about scams, I got super excited. So we're really excited to have you here. And we know that scams don't have an age limit. People get scammed at all ages in different ways. But so before we get started, why do you think stories about scams and con artists are so popular?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons that people are really interested by these stories. And one of them is that I think we all have kind of this almost morbid curiosity of how did they manage to do that, especially in some of the cases we're going to talk about today. These are like huge, grand scale types of things, and people are, I think, rightfully curious about how you manage to do something like that and how you manage to prolong that for so long without getting caught. And the other piece of it, I think sometimes in media, we get the opportunity to see the scam unfold, but then also a lot of the times at the end, the bad person gets caught and there's some kind of justice and we get closure from watching that happen. And unfortunately, a lot of the time in real life that we don't get that kind of closure. And so seeing this kind of stuff in media is a lot more entertaining because it makes us feel okay at the end because the good stuff happens,
Right.
versus in real life it doesn't. So.
And if you are joining us right now, please note this is pre-recorded, but please know that if you post any questions or comments below regarding the show, we will make sure to reply to them. But today we're joined by Courtney Anclam with AARP Wisconsin. April is Financial Literacy Month, so we're talking a little bit about scams, but kind of more in like pop culture media. So I'd love to throw this one at you, and it's just because I just finished watching it on a streaming channel. So if we could start with Elizabeth Holmes, and she was like I guess the founder creator of Theranos. So what can you tell us about the media adaptation, and what we can learn from them?
Yeah, so the Theranos case was a really big deal that happened in real life. And there's a lot of media around this. You probably just finished watching The Dropout on Hulu.
Yes.
That just finished this last week or so. So that's a really new adaptation. There's also a podcast all about this. There is a documentary on HBO. There's a book about this case. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how it works, and then I'm going to talk about some of the red flags we see and how those kinds of things apply to what we as like normal consumers might experience as well. So with the Theranos case, what happened is Elizabeth Holmes was an inventor. She said, hey, I have this really great invention. We're calling it the Edison. And basically, instead of drawing tons of vials of blood when you go to get lab work done, we can just prick your finger and get a little bit of blood, and we can run hundreds of tests on this blood in our Edison machine. And it sounded like kind of a miraculous invention, and she got a lot of powerful people to invest in this. She had a huge sprawling campus in Silicon Valley. People were really invested in this, and it turned out that her machine could not do what she said it could do. And this unfolded over a series of years. So this is not just something that sprang up out of nowhere and went away. This is like several years long. She managed, well, the whole company managed to kind of report that they could do this without actually having any kind of data to back up that they could do it. And so eventually they did get caught. She got sentenced, and she was found guilty, and she's going to be sentenced, I think, later this year. So hopefully we will see some kind of retribution for this. And this is an interesting case because, this started out as something that sounds like she had really good intentions and just kind of got blown way out of proportion. And thankfully, a whistleblower came forward, and that was how this all kind of started to come undone. And so, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so yes, I did watch it. It just ended, and I was familiar with hearing about it in the news because it definitely made the news. The scale of her fraud is like it's either high millions or billions, because I know she scammed a national like pharmacy chain. She had her employees kind of on board about lying. And when you deal with people's health care and health, especially going to certain clinics where I think some of the patients had cancer, I also knew as part of it, like some people were misdiagnosed, stating that they had these severe diseases that they didn't. So for her to scam national pharmacy chain was just crazy to me that they actually kind of fed into the promises that she said about this machine.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really unfortunate because this is something that if it was real, this would be an amazing service to be able to offer. And they were offering, these blood tests, like you said, they could do all kinds of stuff and promise to, early detect stuff, and you could get these tests done at a cheaper price than you could at a traditional laboratory. And I would definitely recommend watching the show or the documentary because there is a lot of detail. I was watching the documentary and it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
But in terms of consumers, because like you said, in this case, she is scamming a pharmacy chain. She is scamming tons of investors and also patients on a large scale. So what we as individual consumers can probably take from this case is if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So there was a lot of instances of people saying, I don't really think that you can like physically, medically do this. And she just kind of, with a bunch of fancy language and jargon, kind of made all those people go away, which is another red flag. Like if somebody is explaining away questions with jargon that you don't really understand, that's a red flag. Like they're just trying to distract you. They're putting up a smoke screen.
Correct.
So those are kind of some like key tangible takeaways for people that we see in all kinds of different scams. So this was, definitely a very interesting case. I'll bring up the slide again. So if you're interested in learning more about this, the documentary was great. I've heard great things about the show. You can get all kinds of information about this case in all kinds of different ways.
And since you have that slide up too, so another I guess scam or fraud case that's been in the news is about Anna Delvey, and there is a series on Netflix regarding it's called Inventing Anna. Of course, I watched that. I knew about the case because it was in the news, but of course, when you watch a show like this, it gives you more information. Can you give us a little kind of overview of what the key points are about that story?
Yeah, so with Anna Delvey, her real name was Anna Sorokin. Basically, what she did is she pretended to be a socialite in New York. So she showed up in New York and started making friends with really powerful, influential people. And her whole thing is she wanted to open, I believe it was an art gallery. And so she is fundraising to open this space in New York and is getting people she's trying to get people to invest in this idea. And what she ended up doing is scamming a lot of financial institutions and scamming her own close friends. So as you mentioned, I think I have Hulu on the slide, but it was a Netflix show. The show Inventing Anna is all about this. There is also a book called My Friend Anna, which is written by one of the women that was one of her victims. She thought they were friends and then ended up losing a ton of money trying to help her. There's also a podcast about this, and she was highlighted on like actual news shows as well. So I'm sure you can provide some more context because with this one, I've mostly read about it. I didn't have time to watch the show yet, unfortunately. But some of the key red flags with this one are one big one is forgery. So I was reading that she just used Microsoft Word to make fake transfer confirmations, fake bank statements. Like, I think sometimes when we think of scammers and con artists, we think that they're some kind of huge masterminds with these unbelievable tools. And it's like, she's using Microsoft Word to do this. This is not anything inaccessible to the random people on the street. So she was able to provide these fake documents to get people to believe she had all of this money to then allow her to stay out at fancy hotels and go on these luxurious trips, and all the while, like I said, like glad handing these people to get them to invest in her space. And another thing that she did that we see in real life is she committed some what we call fake check scams. So she forged some fraudulent checks, went to the bank and deposited those, and then immediately withdrew money and was able to withdraw like tens of thousands of dollars from that bad check before they realize it's a bad check. So we see this in real life where scammers will send people a huge check and they'll be like, hey, here's payment for this. Oh, we overpaid you by, $50,000. Keep $10,000 for the trouble and just send us back $40,000. So you think you're getting, this big sum of money and you send back their quote unquote change, and it turns out the check they gave you was bad all along and you're just out that money that you've sent them. So that's a tactic we see in real life that she used to get herself money.
And
And
she
like,
definitely got in trouble. She was, if I'm not mistaken, she served maybe 2 years in prison, just got out recently. But I think she's with ICE because they were going to deport her back to Germany, if I'm not mistaken. There was another aspect of the story too in the beginning. If you watch the streaming service series about it, where she actually did credit card fraud too, in the sum of like $300,000, which is just crazy to me when you watch this. She was so good at lying that if you get a financial institution that takes your word for it to almost give you $60 million to purchase a building, it's just hard to fathom that somebody is that good. And if I'm not mistaken, she was like in her early to mid 20s also, so she was pretty young.
definitely, yeah. And I think this goes back to another common theme we see across all of these cases is these con artists, like, this is their job, is to be really good at making you believe them. So she's definitely a good case of that, and it's interesting to see her talk about it because she doesn't think she's a con artist.
Correct.
Like, she maintains that she didn't really commit crimes and stuff like that, and it's just like you said, it's just mind-boggling to see the scale of this, and then for her to be like, oh, I didn't do anything. And another interesting thing about her is that I had read that she's actually already got offers for when she gets out of prison to do like reality TV about her life and a podcast deal. And it's just really frustrating to learn that she's just going to continue to be rewarded for this bad behavior.
And I know there was another kind of series, I believe is on Netflix. And this one I know I've read a lot about. I feel like this one probably makes the news a little bit more, but it was the Tinder Swindler. If we could chat a little bit about that and how it relates to fraud and scams.
Yeah. So the Tinder Swindler is a documentary available on Netflix. And I will say it's not like a really dry documentary. I think they did a really good job of making it engaging and almost kind of cinematic. So if you're like, I don't like documentaries, definitely still give it a try. But it is also based on an article. Well, I shouldn't say based on, it's based on real life. Like, this guy actually did this. But there was an article in a Norwegian newspaper that was published by these investigative journalists. And that was kind of where this documentary takes a lot of its information from, and those journalists are interviewed. So the case with the Tinder Swindler is this man, Simon, his real name is Hayat, but he went by Simon Leviev. He pretended to be the son of a diamond mogul, and he was on Tinder, and he would match with women and immediately take them on these beautiful like private jets and take them to these luxurious hotels, and it was this really amazing first date, and these women were, you know, like so impressed and just really wanted to continue to connect with him because he did a really good job of making them feel like he understood them, and he opened up to them and they felt that they understood him too. So he did a really good job of creating this emotional connection immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, he would continue to build this relationship until there are 3 women in the documentary, until these women felt really like they loved him and cared for him, and they thought he reciprocated those feelings. And once he got them to that point, he would then say, oh, you know, the diamond industry is dangerous. I have enemies and they're coming for me. I have to stop using my own credit cards because they're tracking me. Can I use yours? And because these women care so much about him and they want him to be safe, they would let him do that. And then it would get to the point where like their cards would get, you know, frozen or maxed out, and then he would say, oh well, like this is, you know, only going to be for another week or so, can you please take out a loan and bring me cash? I promise I'll pay you back. And because he had taken them on these luxurious dates in a private jet, and because he's the son of a diamond mogul, they had reason to believe he would pay them back. Like, they thought he was good for it. And it turns out, in the end, this is just some guy. He is just some dude pretending to be the son of this diamond mogul. And you find out later, like, he had, photoshopped a bunch of photos on Instagram. He had created a fake, web search. So if you went to search for him, it would look like he was actually their son. So he did a lot of work to make this seem legitimate. So even, these women even mention in the documentary, like, the first thing I do is I Google the people I'm going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing all the right stuff. It's just he's already covered his tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And these women, some of them took out, hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans because, again, he was promising to pay them back. And he would even say, like, oh, here's a confirmation of the wire transfer, again, forging those things just like we saw with Anna.
Mm-hmm.
And the women were they're unfortunately just on the hook for that money. And they
Courtney,
are.
do you know, did he serve time? I don't think he did.
He,
Did he?
he served a little bit of time, but then got let out because it was during COVID.
Oh, that's right.
And so he got out. And I mean, this man has committed crimes in multiple countries.
Mm-hmm.
This was by far one of the most frustrating cases I read because, yeah, he served like the smallest amount of time for the amount of damage he did. It's not proportional. He should still be in jail. I mean, he has ruined lives financially and emotionally, and he's still just out there. And he lives as a free man today. And he is actually offering business consulting on a website. Like, people can hire him to do stuff. And I just, it's mind-boggling. So this is really a problem that we see a lot is these romance scams. And again, it goes back to what we talked about. These people are so good at creating connections and making you feel like you both care about each other and you want to help them because you care. And so I'm going to bring up the slide again because I had a few things I wanted to make sure I mentioned. So with romance scams, there are a few red flags that we see over and over. So the first thing is he took their communications off of Tinder. A lot of the time you'll see the women in the documentary talk about communicating with him on a different messaging service, which ended up working for them because then they had all of this documentation later. But there's less kind of protections if you take the communication off the app. He built, like I mentioned, intense relationships so that these women really felt connected to him. And then he started asking for larger and larger sums of money. So this is, like I said, the kind of blueprint for how these work. And I know, Amber, you had sent me some articles about people who, after watching the Tinder Swindler, realized that they had experienced this or were currently experiencing this. So this kind of thing happens all the time with people losing, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and I usually tell the story of my uncle who has now passed away, but he was maybe 75 talking to a woman overseas who's like 25. And she was going to live with him, and he probably sent her $15,000, and it just happens, and it's just really sad. But I definitely think this is a great example of, like, if something's just not sitting right, like, be curious and, like, do your research. And Courtney, I know you've given really good examples of instances where people are actually like existed. Do you have examples of something that's fictional?
Yeah. So the last example I have is the movie I Care a Lot, which is from Netflix. It came out a couple of years ago. And this is a fictional movie, but it was inspired by real life guardianship fraud. And I was doing some research after I had watched this movie and learned about this woman, April Parks. I feel like she deserves her own documentary because it's just wow. So this movie is really entertaining, aside from like the fraud aspect. So if you're kind of like, I don't really care about this real life stuff, this is a good one to get you started. And basically what happens is the main character is a legal guardian. And so she, in the movie, targets people who are older, who have a lot of money and assets, and she gets them legally declared in court as incompetent, which means they need a legal guardian. And then, of course, she steps in to be their guardian. She then has complete control of their money, their assets, where they go, which usually ends up being some kind of care facility. And then at the care facility, she can decide their routine. She's in control of their medication, their visitors, their access to their cell phone. And this, when I watched this movie, I was like, there is no way this is how it actually happens in real life. Like, this is because there's a scene where she shows up. This woman that she is targeting doesn't even know this is happening because legally, if it's an emergency, the person who is becoming a ward of the state doesn't even have to be present at this hearing. So they're not even aware that this is happening. And in the movie, she shows up, she's like, "Hi, Jennifer, I'm your legal guardian. Pack up your stuff. You're out of your house." And Jennifer is kind of like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. And she says, "Oh, well, if you, like, here's the legal documents. I'm your guardian. I'm here to take care of you. And if you don't go, the police are here and they're going to take you." So it's this really scary, intimidating situation. And again, when I watched this scene in the movie, I was like, this can't be how it really happens. And then I read this article, How the Elderly Lose Their Rights, which was a New Yorker expose about this woman, April Parks. And it happened in real life, almost exactly like this. So basically, then once she has these wards under her kind of control, she then pays herself legal fees out of their estate. She sells off their houses and takes the money. Like, she goes through the house and takes anything that's valuable and keeps it herself. I mean, she absolutely liquidates these people's estates and then uses that money to pay herself for her guardianship fees. So
it's a very good movie and scary movie at the same time. Exactly, to kind of know that there are people out there who could do this to somebody who doesn't even realize kind of what's going on, and you're signing away pretty much all your assets.
And the worst thing is this is legal to be someone's guardian. And obviously in these cases, there's some shady dealings going on where, you might have somebody who is declaring these people incompetent for you. And there is an element of fraud for sure. But once you're in that situation, because guardianship is a legal thing, it's very difficult to get out of it. So I found out after reading all of this stuff, the best way to avoid having this just like sprung on you is to do your estate planning, have your power of attorneys in place like way before you think you need them to avoid this kind of situation. This isn't as rampant, but it is terrifying. And some kind of red flags that we can take from this, aside from, the guardianship aspect, is an unexpected appearance and a lot of pressure. So in these cases, like I said, like, you're not expecting them to show up and then they're like, "Oh, the cops are here, like, you need to do this, hurry up and pack." We see kind of the same elements with a lot of scams where a scammer will contact you unsolicited. They'll pretend to be, say, like Microsoft, and they'll say, "Hurry up and give me your password." And there's a lot of pressure to perform and do things that they want you to do. So those are, like, as an everyday person, some kind of red flags you can take from this. But yeah, this movie was action packed. There's also an element of like the mafia is involved. So this one is very entertaining, but the real life basis of it is really, really terrifying. So.
And Courtney, I know we're getting to the end of our show. Could you just tell us if our viewers are looking to receive more information or resources, if you could talk about what AARP has to offer?
Yeah. Sorry, I got really long-winded because this
No,
stuff
no,
is like fun and interesting to
so
talk
good. Yeah,
about.
absolutely.
But AARP has what we call the Fraud Watch Network. So our website is aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network. You can find all kinds of articles about different kinds of scams there. We do also have a podcast. If you are interested in these kind of like true crime types of things, the podcast talks about actual scams that have happened. So I would definitely recommend checking that out on our website. And I do also just want to mention AARP is here as a resource and prevention tools, and we can help connect you with people who can help resolve issues. But if you think you might have been the victim of a scam, your best bet is to contact the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection or the Federal Trade Commission to file a complaint, and they can take actual legal action for you. So we're here to be a resource and connect you with that stuff if you need it.
Great, Courtney. I want to thank you so much for joining us during Financial Literacy Month and bringing us some examples of fraud and scams, but in a kind of entertaining and interesting way. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And as always, we like to mention some upcoming events that might be of interest to you. So this Friday, is Movies for Grown-Ups, West Side Story. Monday is a virtual Lunch and Learn Save Your Money that is with Courtney and I, once again celebrating Financial Literacy Month. So we will be virtual on Monday. Tuesday, the 26th, is a panel discussion, The Joy of Getting Organized by Daybreaker. Thursday, the 28th, AARP presents a virtual concert with everybody's favorite 1980s singer, or at least she's mine, Debbie Gibson. And then Wednesday, May 4th, lecture, The Music of John Williams, Star Wars, Jaws, Jurassic Park, and more. You can find additional information and to register at the information below. Small Dollar Big Impact. The next application will be due Tuesday, May 17th. Once again, these are small grants of up to $1,000 that you can use if you're like a nonprofit, municipality, that you want to show impact in your community with something fun, crazy, cool, thinking outside the box. Next application, once again, is due May 17th. You can find additional information and to apply at aarp.org/WI, and then it's SDBI, which stands for Small Dollar Big Impact. For next week's show, once again, we love our volunteers. So we're going to talk a little bit more about National Volunteer Month with Tara Shaver, who works out of our Office of Volunteer Engagement with AARP. So please join us back here next Thursday, April 28th at noon on our Facebook.com page or our YouTube page. And we look forward to seeing you then. Take care.